everybody, welcome to Fresh Out the Box Does Another Interview. I am Johananon, the board game guru and game master extraordinaire.
I am the co-host Casualty CDG, a retired child crimes and human trafficking detective turned tabletop titan and improv comedian.
All right. My name's Noble Smith, and I am currently the franchise narrative director for the series Age of Empires at Xbox.
Yeah,
What
that's
that?
that's
what
crazy.
does that mean? What is that? So, in my mind, I'll tell you what it means in my mind, and you can tell me if I'm right. Are you the Kevin Feige of Age of Empires? Are you the mind that all the writing and all of the stories have to go to make sure that they're accurate and decent and stick to the Age of Empires feel? Is that?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of similar to that. I mean, I wish I was Kevin Feige because that guy's a genius, and I love the Marvel universe. But yes, the Age of Empires realm is vast. We have the game has been around for over 2 decades, and we have players all over the world. It's the most evenly, like if you put the world into 4 boxes, like Asian Pacific countries and North America and Europe and South America, it would be the most evenly divided game in the Microsoft portfolio.
Interesting.
So, yeah. But we have all these games. We've been redoing them for the past 5 years. So we did definitive editions of Age 1, 2, and 3. Simultaneously, we were working on Age of Empires 4 with this amazing company in Vancouver, Canada called Relic Entertainment. Did Warhammer and Company of Heroes, if you're into the World War II stuff. Brilliant people. Anyway, my job is to make sure I'm like the keeper of the canon. I'm the vanguard, of history, the guardian of history. So I make sure that we're historically accurate. I'm also our Geopol person for our studio, which is called World's Edge. So I make sure that we're not doing something that offends another country, or make certain that the flags are right, and oversee even things like the languages, so that they're properly speaking the correct languages. So we redid Age of Empires 3, which had representations of indigenous North Americans, so Native American people and First Nations people from Canada. And we realized when we were redoing this older game that the languages weren't actually right. They were supposed to be speaking the Iroquoian language and the Siouan language, or Lakota and Haudenosaunee. And we realized when we hired subject matter experts from the various tribes that they weren't actually speaking the correct languages. So we hired people who were language experts from the tribes to translate them, and then hired native actors to actually redo all the dialogue.
That is awesome.
That is awesome. That's really cool.
That seems like so much fun to do, to find the people to get it done. That just seems like a blast, putting it all together.
That's one of the cool things about working for a big company like Xbox. We have the money to do this stuff, do it right. With Age of Empires 4, I don't know if you've played it. Do you guys have Game Pass?
I have indeed played it, and I do have Game Pass, yeah.
We have a podcast that we do called Fresh Out the Podcast, and I don't know how many times Jahan and I have said over and over, you need to get Xbox Game Pass. It's the best value in gaming.
Yeah.
You will get your money's worth. I guarantee it. We play almost exclusively Game Pass games.
it's
almost exclusively.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically like, when you have Netflix and you see some new show, it's like, wow, I get to watch Squid Game. Essentially, it's not free, but it feels like it's free. You get to get this AAA game, Age of Empires 4, that was just nominated for Best Sim and Strategy Game of the Year by the Game Awards in Los Angeles. That was announced like 2 days ago. You get to basically play it for free.
Yeah.
And this game took us 5 years to develop. And so, like with Age of Empires 4, we have all of this video. We have over 2 hours of 4K HDR video, sometimes shot at 1,000 frames per second, to show these awesome things from history. These videos that we call hands-on history videos that show how mail was made, or illuminated manuscripts were done, or how an anthropomorphic Rus, mask was forged. And then we have these cool campaign videos that hit the major beats of the story that kind of lead you into the different missions and take you on this journey through these huge spans of time sometimes 400 years in the case of the Rise of Moscow campaign, and then a 60-year period for the Mongol Empire.
I think it's really cool that there are keepers of lore for for Star Wars and for Wikipedia and for Marvel and DC. There are all these keepers of lore. But your keeping of lore is, dare I say, is it 100% historically accurate? 99%? I don't want to force you to make a claim.
No, it's a good question.
Instead of keeping a fictional universe, you have to keep a very broad knowledge of very detailed history, it seems.
Wow.
Yeah, and we hire tons of experts. For doing these films for H4, we worked with a company in the UK called Lion Television. They created the program Horrible Histories, which you've probably seen. They are incredible at doing research and finding the right people to speak to these different time periods, and like in the case of H4, the different crafts that were so important to the medieval period. Everything was made by hand. We actually wanted to show like how incendiary arrows were made. So there's a video, and these were done shot over like a year before COVID. So we had the videos all done in the can, and then we would watch the videos and we'd be like, wow, this is incredible. We saw how incendiary arrows were made. We need to add this to a feature for the English longbowmen. Okay. Yeah. So it's an upgrade, and you get to watch the video how it's made, and then you realize you get to do that upgrade, and then we did it for all of the civs because it's fun to set buildings on fire.
Yeah, yeah.
But Gary, to go back to your question, I mean, you have to gamify some stuff. We're not creating a battlefield simulator. Okay, so the stories. The stories that set up the different missions and campaigns and the hands-on history videos, it's all 100% as accurate as we could possibly be, historically correct. But then you have to kind of let things be a little bit more gamified in the actual missions. Otherwise, this is boring and it's a drudge work.
Yeah.
But we did this thing where we shot on location, so one of the opens with the Battle of Hastings in the campaign. And this is the famous battle. If people don't know this, it's when Guillaume de Normandy, who was a Norman baron. The Normans were kind of like the descendants of the French Vikings who conquered that part of northern France. And this guy saw this comet. It was Halley's Comet. And he thought it was a sign from God that he should be the King of England. And he was a distant cousin of the king at the time, and when the king died, people voted in England because it was the Saxons, and they would have moots, kind of like an Entmoot from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And they picked this guy Harold. Harold and William, or Guillaume, that's his French name, had been buddies earlier, and William, or Guillaume, thought that Harold had pledged to help support him be the king. So he was pissed, and he was like, I'm going to invade England. And they had this superior technology. They had mail, surcoats, and they had horses. The Saxons didn't really have horses. So they invaded with 10,000 knights, most of them mounted, and they fought at the Battle of Hastings. I know I'm kind of rambling on here, which is in southern England, and we shot on location there, and you can see these what we call illuminated ink, which is kind of like taking the in-game models and making little animated characters superimposed on the battlefield. And the idea was, and sometimes you can see cars driving by in the background or whatever, that's okay, because we wanted to show how these places are still there. You can go there. You can go visit the Battle of Hastings. You can go to the place where Jeanne d'Arc was burned at the stake in Rouen, France. You can go to the Great Wall of China. And we like to celebrate history. We want people to read books and travel, because over the years, we've had so many people come up to us on the streets. Like, I've been on the Great Wall of China wearing my Age of Empires 4 developer sweatshirt and had people come up to me and say, I learned history from your games. And that's a big responsibility, and we take it seriously. And we want to entertain, celebrate, and humanize history.
Yeah, I've grown up my entire life playing Age of Empires since I was very, very young.
That's awesome.
1, 2, 3, played them all. I played 4. I've talked about 4 on the podcast before, but I talked about the superimposed battlefields on the live locations. Fantastic. I love the unlockable learning videos. I love the crossbow one. That one was great.
Yeah, that one's cool.
They're just also it's like 3 parts video game, 1 part history channel, and then like a half a point of travel channel, and it's fantastic. I love all of those things.
Jahan, I'm glad you did I say your name right?
You did. You did.
All right. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that crossbow video is interesting, because when we got that one in, we were going through the rough cut. I was like, you know what? These pavises that they're showing in here are like crucial. We have the arbaletrier, which is the French crossbowman in the game, but they don't have a pavise, which was this huge stand-up shield that had kind of a tripod that they could fix to the ground, and then they could shoot from behind it. And, it was an incredible protective screen. So we were like, let's add these to those units. So now you can deploy pavises for those units, and it gives you this super shield buff.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. I love the addition of like deployable stuff. I love you guys have changed the gameplay in all the best ways, and also to your credit about the language stuff. I'm Iranian, and so it was cool when I played the Persian Empire. I actually heard them speaking Farsi. I can't really speak a lot of it, but like I recognize it, and like having them say salam. Whoopee, like that kind of stuff when you're clicking on them is just so cool for a little brown boy living in Texas to hear. You know what I mean?
That gives me chills, seriously, because I was actually going to tell the story of the Delhi Sultanate speaking Farsi, because when we got the original dialogue for that, they were Iranian actors, okay, and the language was written by scholars who knew how to write in medieval Persian, because all of the languages evolve in the game. So if you're playing as the Chinese, they're speaking ancient Chinese, medieval Chinese. And some people in China were like, hey, you did this wrong. You didn't get the languages right. They didn't realize that we were so meticulous in doing this, that they're speaking this ancient form. And then every language evolves as you're playing it. So one of our AI programmers years ago, at World's Edge, he actually went to work for Relic, is a guy named Puya, and he was sitting there one day, and we had the dialogue stubbed in for the Delhi Sultanate, and he got up and he was like, what is this? What am I hearing? They're speaking Farsi. And I was like, yeah, the Delhi Sultanate actually came from Persia and migrated down, conquered northern India. And he was like, but this is incredible. It's like this weird sort of like Shakespearean version of Farsi. And I said, yeah, because you're hearing the first age language version, and then it'll evolve. And he was like, this is incredible. And I thought,
yeah, absolutely,
this is so cool.
As an underrepresented peoples, it means everything. It was yeah.
That's the goal. You might hear this thing at Microsoft, Xbox puts out, gaming for everyone. We took that to heart years ago, and we were like, we are going to make this gaming for everyone. We're going to fix all of the history for each one of these games. Like with even Age 1, I went through every history section, and Forgotten Empires, which was the group that redid that game, and 2 as well. We made sure that there are new things that you find out, new discoveries, new archaeological sites that give us new information. Everything isn't from the lens of white dudes smoking pipes in the West anymore. We have new information, and we have to be responsible and update it and make it right. Because we want somebody like you, Jahan, who plays this game to be like, I'm represented, and I can see myself in and that's cool.
That's spectacular. Yeah, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for that. Growing up, it meant so much.
That's cool.
I could sit around and talk about and nerd out about history all day because I have so many more history questions. Like
all of them.
Where do you there are horrible things that happened all throughout history.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have been swept under the rug because I would say for the most part, we've always heard winners write history. So a lot of the horrible things that happened are ignored. Is there a way that you either choose to address that or have a line of what kind of shouldn't be addressed in a video game? Because some things aren't good game. Wow. Some things aren't fun, and some things are history.
No.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard. I mean, you've brought so many things to mind as you were talking about this, and yeah, history is horrible. Horrible things have happened. History is mostly a history of war and conquest, and I think that we don't gloss over that. We have these cool things called text collectibles in Age 4 where we talk about, like the Mongols were fascinating. They were badasses, but they killed millions of people probably. And there was like the famous siege of Baghdad in the mid 13th century where Baghdad was like the most beautiful, educated city in the world at that time, and they just wiped it out and threw all of the books into the river and murdered everybody, pretty much committed genocide. And you can't avoid those stories, but you don't necessarily want to dwell on it. So we thought we could have the siege of Baghdad as a mission, but it just wouldn't be. It would make you feel kind of sad and horrible.
Yeah, as an American who doesn't know a lot about it, it might just be another level and another mission. But as somebody from the Middle East, as somebody from whose family is from there, that's a pretty insensitive mission, and that's the kind of thing that you have a strange job in knowing those sort of things. You can't just Google a battle and throw that battle in the game. There's a lot more to it.
Yeah, there is. And I mean, it's one of the very difficult things with working with, real stories. I mean, I used to work on a game called Killer Instinct, which is a goofy fighting game. And, it's super fun, but, it's like, it doesn't have that, if you mess up the lore, and you retcon something or whatever, you can't retcon history. And if you've ever read like The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn, you know that a lot of history that we were taught, at least me, I was born in the 60s. So a lot of that history was from the point of view of the conquerors.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't right.
We could talk about whitewashing the American education system all day. I learned about the Tulsa City Massacre from a television show,
I learned about it when I was at a Black Lives Matter march, and a person had a sign, and I was like, "What?" Because I heard something about it, in the back of my mind, I kind of knew. And this African American guy gave me this long story, and then he told me the story, and then I went home and read about it, and I was like, "My God."
I saw it on an episode of Lovecraft Country, and I was like, "What is this? Like, this is obviously for the television show." I looked it up. I was like, "Holy crap, this happened!" Like,
it really happened. It's really, like the My Lai massacre. If you've read anything about that in Vietnam, there were like two guys who were like, "Stop! You have to stop!" And they were trying to save people. 500 innocent villagers were massacred, and that guy was court-martialed. For trying to save people. He was a hero, an American hero. And actually, they're making a movie about that guy with Viggo Mortensen, so that should be interesting.
Nice.
He plays the general that comes in and handles this case. But yeah, we have a lot of crazy things in our history that, just working with the Native American peoples on Age of Empires 3 Definitive Edition, I learned so much. I got to work with an elder from the Lakota tribe, and he told me so many things about his life. He was a Vietnam veteran. His brother died in Vietnam. And it's like, one of the questions I said, it's like, you were a Native person growing up on a reservation, and yet you enlisted to go fight. That's what we were taught. We were taught to, fight for our country. And I thought that was pretty amazing and poignant. And he actually gave us a picture of his late brother, who we used in one of our blog posts to talk about his story.
I think the hardest part, if I was working with Lakota tribe elders, is I wouldn't want the project to end. I would just keep extending it. Like, I need more time. I need to hear more stories. There's more wisdom to be had. We need more for the game. Like, I would never want that to end. Like, can we just get these? Can we get them on staff, please? I want to hang out with them all day.
Yeah, this elder, Cedric Goodhouse, such a cool guy, and he gave us pictures of art, like a drum that he made, a Thunderbird drum, and a grinding stone from his family, so we could fix these things called the home cities in the game, where we were redoing all the art, all the the native art on the teepees, and he told me something when he was looking at the art, because it was like, we said, what is wrong with this? Tell us what we can do to fix this, because it's almost like a diorama, and you see these people standing there in the teepees, and there's a fire. And he was like, well, we didn't have pots to hold water. We had buffalo bladders, and the buffalo bladder hung from a tripod. So I was like, we're going to do that. We're going to get that in there. And we did. And it looks really cool.
So interesting. Yeah. So as we were talking about all of these historical things, one of the reasons why I like learning about, crossbows, native peoples, all that kind of stuff, it feeds directly into another natural interest of mine, which is tabletop role-playing games. And so historical context, is always fun for to use, especially when it comes to like medieval arms and armory kind of stuff. And I know that you're a fan as well of Dungeons and Dragons, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. The first time I played was in 1978, and it changed my life. It was this. I went to this on a trip in the summer with a friend who I hadn't seen in a couple of years, and we went to this little island in the San Juan Islands, which is north of here in Washington State. And we were in this little kind of crappy cabin for a couple of days, and he actually had the white box, but this is my version that I just pulled up.
Oh, hell
and
yeah.
I remember, like, when I first got this, you got the die, right? And it came with a little crayon, which I don't know if it's still in here, but you would color in the indentation for the numbers, and I just thought that was the most rad thing. And then you kind of rub it off, and then it'd be like, oh yeah, that's a 20. And anyway,
that's a real custom die right there.
Yeah,
you can use whatever crayon color you want to fill in your numbers.
Exactly. Anyway, this was a magical couple of days, because he took me on this solo dungeon quest, and I was just like, my mind was expanded, and I hadn't read Lord of the Rings yet. And the funny thing is, a couple of years later, after I'd been playing D&D and painting figurines, like I think one of the first ones I got was the Grenadier dragon. And awesome. A couple of years ago, I got a one off of eBay and ended up, I don't know if you can see this, but I painted that with my daughter. And
that's so cool.
It's the one from this set, and it was so much fun to do that. And having those figurines, I was a very lonely kid. When I was 9 years old, we moved to this place called Yakima, Washington, which is in the high desert. I was, of course, a total nerdling and didn't have any friends. And I went to the hobby shop, this place called Unicorn Castle. And that's where I saw these boxes of the Grenadier sets. And then Ral Partha was another maker that came out a little bit around the same time. Anyway, this kid came over to my house and he had some figurines. It was from the fighting set and the dwarf set.
Hell yeah, another nerd.
Yeah, and his name was Ross, and he was the son of a pastor, and he had to play in secret. His dad didn't want him to play D&D,
Yeah.
so he would come to my house, and he showed me these figurines, and then he had painted them with Tester's car model paint, so they're like really shiny. So when I went to the hobby shop this first time, because he told me where you could buy the figurines, because we started playing together, and grid paper and stuff like that to make dungeons. And I went to the hobby shop and I was like, how do you make the figurines look so cool? Because they had some in a glass case. And the guy around the hobby shop said, well, this is called poly S paint. And the colors are what's called flat. And that's what makes them look realistic, kind of like they don't shine. Like your clothes don't shine. Look at your shirt. It's not shining right now. It's cloth. It's made of wool or whatever. I was like, oh my God. So then I started this collection of paints and, brushes. And I got a big magnifying glass that I got the Goodwill that was like some old like jeweler's thing. And I would,
Yeah.
got to where I could paint the eyeballs on figurines. And that was really important part of my childhood. So like when Stranger Things opens and he holds up the Demogorgon, that's like one of the first things you see. And I had that figurine. I was like, this is going to be a great show.
Yeah.
I'm just going to love it.
I love that show too. Kids on Bikes is always a good genre. Yeah, I also
And
I had similar growing up. Found my game shop. It smelled like the nail salon next door. So like that smell still triggers like nostalgia in my. If I smell the nail smell, I'm like like I feel like a kid again, which might explain a lot about my development.
That's funny. Well, my hobby shop was right next to the pizza place that had the arcade. So that's when I became an arcade rat, because I could go to the hobby shop, do all my D&D stuff, and then go next door and play my vector graphics.
Funny that you say that. The same hobby shop Jahan's talking to, they actually had a small room in the back that was the LAN room, and it was basically the only thing you could LAN there was like Counter-Strike at the time. And so when he was up there with the models and playing D&D, me and my group of friends actually used to be back in the LAN room, and Jahan and I didn't know each other at this time, like very early, late high school or late junior high, early high school years. And so we would be back there playing Counter-Strike, and then in that same parking lot was a CC's Pizza, so we also had the pizza place by the hobby shop, and it had the arcade in the back. But by our era, arcades sucked.
It was a dying industry. But man, when I hear that, the old MIDI stuff for something like Galaga or Defender or whatever, it just takes me back. Or Gauntlet was one of the greatest games ever, because 4 people could play together. It was, dungeon crawler. It satisfied. I mean, it was like the precursor to, Diablo.
Yeah. See, I grew up with the 3D Gauntlet Legends, which was also 4-player in the arcades. And like anytime I saw that machine, I knew it was going to be a good day. I'd go up to it, pump it full of quarters, and then it released on PlayStation 2 eventually. Just good times. I love Gauntlet. Red Warrior needs food badly.
Exactly. Love those. We didn't even know they were memes, but we would say those things. And I highly recommend a book that a friend of mine wrote called Fantasy Freaks and Gaming Geeks. If you've never read it, it's by a guy named Ethan Gilsdorf. And came out about, 10, 11 years ago. And it's all about Ethan rediscovering Dungeons and Dragons, and then going on this epic journey to like Milwaukee, Marquette University to hold the Tolkien manuscripts, and like the Doors of Durin, picture, and then New Zealand where, Lord of the Rings was shot. And I was going to say this to go back to the
You shouldn't
D&D
have
thing.
told Jahan this, because now he's just going to quit his life and do these things.
Well, I have a Tolkien thing that I'll tell you about in a sec. But so when I first read Lord of the Rings, I was like, wow, this guy, Tolkien, he's really copying Dungeons and Dragons with his halflings and all the stuff in the Mines of Moria is just like a dungeon. And then I looked at the date that it was published, and I was like, oh my God, this came first. And this is what, started, Gary Gygax on his journey, and such a huge influence. And so with Tolkien, I ended up writing a book called The Wisdom of the Shire. And it was sort of like my take on the philosophy of hobbits and how you can live a better life through through everything that J.R.R. Tolkien put in these books. And that was published like 10 years ago. But one of the things that I've done since then, and I wrote a blog about it that you can read on my shirewisdom.com site, is a speed run of J.R.R. Tolkien's Oxford. And I've been to Oxford, I think 7 times since I was a kid. And this speed run takes you, if you only have like a day or a couple of days in Oxford, you can go to Merton College, where he taught. You can go to the Eagle and Child pub, where he and C.S. Lewis sat in the wooden snugs at the front and drank beer and talked about their stories. You can go to Wolvercote Cemetery, where he's buried with his wife, and their tombstones say Baron and Luthien on them, and go to the houses where he lived. And it's really kind of an amazing experience. If you're a Middle-earth fan, you have to do it someday.
No, that sounds awesome. Yeah, I'm a big fan. I grew up with the movies. I grew up watching the cartoon animated movies from like the 60s or 70s. And I think...
Ralph Bakshi. Yeah. So another friend of mine, Peter S. Beagle, who wrote The Last Unicorn, he wrote the original screenplay for the Ralph Bakshi, The Fellowship of the Ring.
Man, you're blowing
Lord of the
my
Ring.
mind.
I met him when I was 16 and at a book reading in 1984, and I said, hey, I want to be a writer. Can I write you and ask you, how I become a writer? And he was like, well, of course you may. And he wrote his address in the back of the book. So we became friends, and he told me something great once, which was when we were both feeling very down about our writing careers. And I was talking to him on the phone, and he said, Noble? He has this beautiful, mellifluous voice, and he said, Noble, nobody ever asked us to be writers. So, I mean, that's the best, you do something because you love it and you have to do it, right? Doesn't matter if you get paid shit. You do that thing.
It's one of those things that I've heard, I've heard it my whole life, and I was finally able to break out of that shell I was stuck in of, more or less the 9 to 5 and doing what you think you're supposed to do and doing what, doing what school trains you to do and what society trains you to do, which is just follow around and do what you're supposed to do.
Right.
It was really once Jahan and I broke into, when we started streaming, we were streaming video games on Xbox, and it felt like a task. Sometimes it felt like a chore. Sometimes I would get nervous and anxious. But once we started doing tabletop games for ourselves, we were just reading rules books. It was just me and Jahan that both had too many tabletop games, and we needed to get through them. Yeah. And so we're just reading rules online to each other, hanging out, talking about books. And like you said, no one asked us to do that. There was no one out there saying, hey, Gary and Jahan, we really need you guys to come out and read obscure tabletop books that aren't D&D, where everyone cares about these fucking books. Like,
yeah.
So we're a year into it. We're a year and like 2 or 3 months into it, and we still haven't, made money. We haven't hit it big. We're not celebrities. We do this because we have to do it. We have to talk about games. If we don't talk about games, it's going to be the two of us. It's just going to be me and Jahan talking about games together forever, unless we talk to other people about it. Like, it's got to happen either way. We have to. So that's great advice. I love it. Yeah, no one asked you to do it. No one asked you to be a writer. No one asked us to be streamers, right? This is our choice. We choose to be here in this space, and we want to create, and we want to share games.
Yeah. So you play a lot of D&D, or you have, and you love Dungeons and Dragons. You love Token, which, great writer. I love the movies and all the stuff he's done. I've always wanted to do the Trail to Mordor in New Zealand. It's quite the undertaking, but it sounds awesome, like a bucket list kind of thing.
I've heard it's a lot of fun.
What other games? Do you play other TTRPGs? Do you have a favorite? Where are you in the space?
It's funny. I haven't been able to play. I play a lot of tabletop games, but they're with my youngest kid. My son, who's a teenager now, is totally into MTG, and he's like hardcore. He's so beyond me that I have these stupid decks. It's like the Rat Plague deck, which I think is just fun to put together. But he just kind of shakes his head because he's doing tournaments and things. But my daughter, who's younger, we do a lot of things like Settlers or Carcassonne, things that boss fight. Looking at there's a game I had to build a whole new bookshelf in this little breezeway outside my office just to hold our tabletop games. Things like Photosynthesis. I don't know if you've ever played that.
That's a good one.
Tree building game.
Yeah, actually, Jahan Connor brought that over to our house one time.
Oh, nice.
And we played it, and he was like, "It's a tree game," and everyone looked at him confused, and I was like, "Bro, I'm so in." Like, like tree game. Come on,
is a solid game. Yeah.
And I think that the thing that I love about this renaissance of the tabletop game industry, we have a place here called Mox Boarding House, which is a fantastic gaming place. And it's in Bellevue, which is really close to Redmond, where I work, which is where the Xbox headquarters is. And it's really fun to walk in there, like pre-COVID on a Friday night, and every one of the booths, it's a place where you can check out a game and just try it out. And people are eating and playing, and there's huge tournaments going on in the back room. And then there's like cool.
So jealous. Isn't Redmond also where Wizards and Paizo are out of?
Yeah, they're actually I think they're in Kent. But yeah, I know people who work at Wizards, and they bought TSR and they own.
That's
D&D.
why you have these awesome places to go. It's because you're just in this city full of all these awesome creators and these gamers. Yeah, that's exactly right. You're right in the heart of it.
If you guys are, like Xbox fans, I used to work on the main campus of Microsoft, which is a trip in and of itself, but they moved us to the city of Redmond. And within like 2 square blocks, there's 343 with the Halo team, and Turn 10 with the Forza team, and the Minecraft team, and publishing, and World's Edge, and we're all just right there, and you can just walk around.
Crazy.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
My old boss, Joseph Staten, actually was on the original Bungie team, and created Cortana and all of this incredible lore. And I don't know if you're excited about Halo Infinite coming out, but
on
already
Monday,
been playing it.
Yeah, so
the
multiplayer launch on Monday. We were every week. I have like I wouldn't call it an obsessive compulsion. I would just call it a way that I relax at the beginning of the week. I go through the game shop and I see what's coming out, what came out, what's on sale, and I never have an intention of buying any of it. But I go through what's on EA Pass. I go through what's free to play. I go through all of it. Every single list that I went through last week. And so this week I come up and I'm looking at Halo, and instead of having that gray banner at the bottom that says pre-installed, it was gone. And I was like, what does that mean?
That was a tricky thing. They didn't tell anybody they were going to do that. They're still working on the I think the campaign comes out December 8th. But anyway, Joseph last year went to he became the creative director of Halo Infinite, and amazing guy, like one of the most incredible people I've worked with in the game business, and I've been in it off and on for 27 years, all the way back to the CD-ROM days. And one thing that people don't know about Joseph is he's actually the voice of the grunts in the game.
Oh hell yeah! That's awesome. I love the grunts. Always have. It's
hilarious.
I remember Combat Evolved came out when I was in like 6th grade. I think it was like the Christmas right around 6th grade, and we'd been playing GoldenEye, right? And in 64, that's basically
fantastic game.
That's all we had for years, and I loved it. It was great. It was the best shooter. There was nothing like it.
Yeah.
Until I went over to my friend Ben's house, and for Christmas, his dad had gotten an Xbox and Halo, and his dad was actually a huge Marathon fan on Mac, which, you know, all the Marathon lore predates the Halo lore, but it's the same universe. And so his dad was a super Bungie nerd. He loved the Marathon lore. He knew everything about Master Chief's armor and the assault rifles before the game even came out. And so I remember Blood Gulch, I saw a Warthog, and coming from GoldenEye on N64 and seeing a full-size 3D Jeep with a minigun, I was like, where am I? What game is this? I am in heaven.
I remember
vehicles in games. I
it was insane. I remember going to my brother's house 20 years ago when the first Xbox came out, and I saw Halo, and I was like, because I'd been out of the game business for a couple of years at that point. I was like, what happened? Where have I been? I got to work with a guy named Ken Lobb, who was one of the designers on GoldenEye. And one of the guns is actually named after him, the Lob. I can't remember which one it is. But he was an amazing... He's still at Xbox. Amazing guy to work with. Knew so much about the game business. And in the 70s, he was like a skateboarder dude, but also a total arcade superstar, and won a Defender game, arcade game, in a contest. And he still has it. Pretty awesome.
Thanks. No, that's man. You know a lot of cool people. It's crazy. So, I guess tabletop. So as far as tabletop role playing games go, do you currently play Dungeons and Dragons?
You know, I do this weird kind of hybrid version with my kids. That's more of a narrative driven version that kind of strips down the all the stats and everything. I mean, I was pretty hardcore into it. Yeah. I mean, I would just memorize those manuals, and I was playing advanced D&D, which is different from probably what you guys grew up playing.
Yeah, I started in 3rd edition,
and I started in 4th edition.
But you know, the essence is still there. But the thing that is the most important to me about Dungeons and Dragons is that it is one of those doorways that it opens up a different part of your brain. And I don't know what it is. There's something magical about it. And I think it saved my life. But like right now, yeah, I haven't really been able to play that many games because I have just been like grinding at Xbox, working on all these different titles for the past, I don't know, almost 8 years now.
That's a good problem to have sometimes.
It is. I mean, one of my dreams would be, I got to work on HoloLens, and I don't know if you've ever seen a HoloLens or put one on, but it's Microsoft's holographic AR, augmented reality projection device. And I was brought in to work on one of the first apps for that. I was the narrative designer and writer of this thing called Holo Tour. And I think it's preloaded if you get a HoloLens. But it was a tour of Machu Picchu and Rome. And it was incredible. And doing this, it's like someday my dream is to make kind of some kind of dungeon crawl AR game, not VR,
Yeah.
but augmented reality maps your space, that gives the same feeling that I got when I was a kid of, like, there's a doorway in my room and all I have to do is find the right key and open it, and something
To a world of
incredible
wonder.
happens.
Oh, I would
Yes.
play that. It sounds awesome. I've seen a lot of VR dungeon building, that kind of stuff. I haven't seen any AR dungeon building or delving.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Which is
Dungeon
surprising. Yeah, you
delving.
figure. I guess you got to strike while that iron's hot, huh?
You know what Gandalf said? The dwarves of Moria delved too deep.
They know not what they awaken.
That's why
in
the
dark.
ball. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting hearing from you guys. I mean, what are you most excited about? Like, you love tabletop games, but you also love video games. Has there ever been like the perfect kind of mashup or cross-pollination of your two worlds?
That's actually a good question. No one's ever asked us that before.
No.
But I'll tell you that what helped kick this channel off actually was a cross-pollination of ideas, now that you mention it. Jahan and I had been playing Xbox, like I said, and we were doing Vermintide 2. It was on Game Pass, I think, at the time. And we wanted to play tabletop games, and we were playing Vermintide, and so we actually both picked up.
We bought the Warhammer Fantasy Role-Playing game,
Warhammer
4th edition.
Fantasy
Yeah.
Role-Playing Guide. That's
I was a big
exactly right.
Warhammer guy growing up.
So we were
Nice.
playing Warhammer video games. We bought the Warhammer books. So, we could leave the world of Warhammer and go straight back into the world of Warhammer. And so that was a really cool cross-pollination of ideas. We want to play... they're doing Darktide next after Vermintide. And I think that might bring us back to playing...
The Warhammer 40k Fantasy Role-Playing game,
to
possibly.
doing a 40k game. Exactly right.
Yeah, so I've always wanted to do like cross-media gaming, because like, especially with Warhammer, it's very good for it, because they have the ship battle game that can lead into the ground battle game that can lead into a tabletop role-playing game. I always wanted to run 4th edition Warhammer and like have armies, and like we play the battle scenes, but like when it gets like, oh, you're in the trenches, then you switch to the role, like that's an undertaking, and it'd be really fun.
I would love
if we
that.
had the money and the time. Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
We can now. You can do it all through...
We could potentially do it on Tabletop Simulator.
That's right. You can do it on Tabletop Sim, and you can paint your models and stuff on your computer, and we can do it that way.
As far as the perfect marriage of TTRPG, I mean, role-playing games have always been a big thing on computer for me. And the greatest one that I had ever played was Baldur's Gate 2, Shadow of Am. Classic. I've even played it somewhat recently. That game was masterful translation of Dungeons and Dragons to digital space.
I love Dragon Age, and
Dragon Age is
love
another good
Mass Effect. Those are two of my favorite role-playing games. I think Dragon Age does a great job of that Dungeons and Dragons feel, with all the different origin stories, especially in Dragon Age Origins. And then Mass Effect, of course, the whole series I love, and super excited that they're going to do some more Mass Effect.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Mass Effect, I remember playing that the first time and being like, wow. The whole dialogue, selection, if that was, with NPCs, and it's like transposed to a D&D kind of world, that would be amazing. Watching my son totally get into Elder Scrolls, I was like, they nailed it.
I totally forgot about Elder Scrolls. Jahan and I, for a long time, that's what we had in common. Our top favorite game of all time was Morrowind.
Ooh, wow.
We loved
Nice.
Elder Scrolls Morrowind.
You both have.
Hold on, John.
Yeah, hold those up at the same time.
Yeah, we both have.
we are big Elder Scrolls fans.
That's awesome.
Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim. We were really lucky. Just a couple of weeks ago, Chris Birch from Modifius Entertainment came on, and they're working on the new Skyrim board game, and it's an
cool.
adventure board game that changes. it was actually, they did a really cool job of extrapolating kind of what
It was
Elder
great.
Scrolls
Yeah.
is, and not just making a Skyrim board game, but making an Elder Scrolls like feel.
Wow.
It changes every time you play. The adventures change. You can outfit your gear in different ways. You have different customizable fantasy races and classes to play it. Well, not classes, but you kind of make your own like Elder Scrolls. And of course, there are lots of packs and lots of upgrades to play completely different.
Yeah, it's a very intense. It's actually live now on GameFound, backable. Very cool game for sure.
I think that I'm always impressed by individuals or groups who can really world build. And I think Tolkien was like the first real world builder. He called it subcreating. Like he was a sort of like beneath God. He was creating his own universe. And there's a new Middle Earth book that came out recently where it has all of this obscure stuff that he did, like tables on, how elves age and, why the Numenorians didn't have beards and things like that. He was so into it that if he could have created a tabletop game, he would have, based on Lord of the Rings, I'm sure, because he had all the stats, he had everything. He knew the miles from, the Shire to, the gates of Mordor. Everything was so fully realized in his brain that it was, even his son Christopher said that, this world was more real to him than our world because he grew up and it was steeped in it. And I think one of the things that we love so much about a game like Dungeons and Dragons, why it's so magical, is we get to be, that sub-creator. We get to create the dungeon, the environment, and the story. And storytelling is just so important as humans. You look back at like cave painting from 60,000 years ago, and they were painting the things that were most important and relevant to them, which were animals, and painting them. There were probably stories there. We just can't interpret them. The stories of the hunt, of these things that were so crucial to life. And the thing that I love about our country, we talked about some things that were wrong with it. I love the fact that we as Americans get to say whatever the hell we want. And we can make fun of our leaders, and we can make fun of rich people, and we can tell the stories that we want to tell, and we don't get censored. And it would be horrible to live someplace where it was a crime to be a storyteller.
Yeah.
Whereas a crime to express yourself and make up cool adventures. So,
yeah, definitely.
No, but one thing I always like to ask about is people in the gaming industry. There are lots and lots of roles. There are lots of jobs in the gaming industry. And I think it's important to let people know not to get discouraged if they want to work in the gaming industry. There's a lot more than being writers and designers and accountants, or there's things like accountants. There's things like social media managers, outreach. There are a lot of things that people can do. And I guess really, could you just kind of talk to me about maybe inspiring people to join the field and the types of positions there are, and how we kind of need inclusivity in everybody is kind of what I'm trying to phrase.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. It is hard to become a writer in the game business. It's really hard because everybody thinks they're a writer. That's the thing I've discovered over the decades. But they're like our business guy at our studio, or World's Edge, which is essentially a publisher. We're publishing everything. We're overseeing all the different games and unannounced titles. Our business guy is a guy named Will McCahill, and Will was an Age 2 player from like the age of 9. And it was his favorite game, and it was inspired to go work for Xbox in the business side, and now he's our business lead, and he's the best Age player in our entire studio, and he's having an influence on the games themselves, not just the business side and the development side. The community aspect is incredibly important. I mean, we're hiring new community people all the time because we have millions of fans all over the world, and we have all these people writing in our forums and asking questions, and we actually have a customer service department now where, you know, if somebody can't load their game right, they can actually write to a real person in Redmond and get an answer. The web team, crucial to go check out our website, ageofempires.com. It's beautiful. So yeah, there's a huge number of people who make a game happen. Like Age of Empires 4, it was 35 people at World's Edge. It was 150 people at Relic Entertainment in Vancouver, and then there were other people around the world doing different things. It's a massive number of people working on games, and the industry is growing exponentially. So, you know, it has dwarfed the film industry.
Yeah, it's. I was gonna say it. There was a point when we could say it was worth more than the film industry, but now it's worth so much more that you're right. It's dwarfed it.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, Microsoft. These numbers are, you know, public knowledge, but I think the last quarter it was like 10 billion in revenue for Xbox.
It's crazy.
And Xbox is just growing. I mean, Xbox bought all of these amazing studios like Bethesda and Playground, and you know, there are going to be all of these insane, sick games coming online that are exclusive content. So when you get your Game Pass subscription for either Xbox or both for Game Pass for PC, those games are available day one. I mean, it's like you can go play Flight Simulator right now and fly over your town and then play Age of Empires 4 and, you know, battle the 100 Years War. And then in a couple of weeks, you're going to be able to do the Halo Infinite campaign, and then you can drive around Mexico in Forza Horizons.
It's such that, like, I would say, you know, you could install it now and play this and this for only $15, and then you could uninstall it. But by the time you would want to uninstall it, you would have something else worth your $15 that month. It just continues to go that way.
Yeah, they've been killing it lately. It's title after title after title. A lot of things that I've always wanted to play. It's just exciting.
And it's all those back compat games too. That's the incredible thing. You know, you can play those games that you loved when you were young.
Yeah, we're huge Xbox fans, and I actually read this past week that Xbox Series X has already outsold the entire Xbox One series in Japan. So in Japan, there are more Series X's in households than any of the previous Xboxes.
That's pretty amazing, since Sony dominates so much there. And Nintendo.
This is the best they've ever done there.
And I love my Switch. I mean, I'm a huge Switch fan. I have to plug in my computer here. I loved Breath of the Wild. That was one of my favorite games. If you haven't played it yet.
I played it, beat all the DLC, loved it. I have all the amiibos.
Yeah.
I have
I have a bunch of amiibos too.
I have an upsetting amount of amiibos.
The best one is the Guardian, because it gave you those ancient weapons drops.
Love the Guardian amiibo. It's probably my favorite amiibo. Oh, there's
so
Gary's
good.
Ganondorf. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got my Ganondorf close by. He's high level in Smash Bros.
That's great. I love the Epona drop, which came with the Link. Can't remember which one, but you know, the exclusive Epona, and you couldn't name it anything else, otherwise it would run away.
Yeah, it was awesome. So many cool just Easter eggs they threw in. Yeah, absolutely. Huge fan of Zelda as well.
But to me, that kind of marriage of, you know, RTF toy and a console is something that tripped me out the first time I ever did it, and seeing the treasure chest land, and I was just like, and I did it on the side of a hill, and they rolled off a cliff, and I was like, no! And then I realized, like, I could just scum save and go back and, make sure I was in a flat place and
I'm
redo
not
it.
even kidding. Jahan and I, like, if we had been kids when Skylanders came out, they
Oh,
would
man.
still be in business.
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah, I remember when Skylanders came out. I was like, "Where was this when I was a kid?" And also, like, what's the other? They did a Disney one too. That was actually pretty cool.
the
But
Skylanders one was cooler than the Disney one, but I know what you're talking about.
yeah, you know what I'm talking
But
about.
my fear, though, is that because, like, when I was a kid growing up in the 70s, we had to make our own toys, and D&D was essentially you're making your own
No.
toy. It gave you the conceits. You had to go out and make everything. You even had to paint your figurines. I'm afraid that games are becoming so cool
Yeah.
and such a constant dopamine hit that people are going to lose that spark to make original stuff. That's why I think people making tabletop games is so cool, and how they're constantly doing new things on Kickstarter or GoFundMe or whatever. And there's a huge passion for them. I hope you two make your own tabletop games someday.
I'm glad you mentioned that. We have met one time about it, and there is pen on paper. It has begun. It is happening.
That's great.
Yeah, we have some ideas, which is right. That's how you get started.
We have a lot of ideas.
So
yeah, I've been doing this like since I was 12, and so I mean I've made games before with some of my past groups. Never really inked anything down though, and yeah, I'd really love to hammer one out. But yeah, I think it's like you said, toys are interacting with video games. Like it might, I don't think it's going to kill the imagination of children. You can't really put a damper on it. But I see what you're saying, and that's why I'm happy for things like D&D clubs at schools, and like my younger cousin, he plays games all the time. But he also is an artist. He draws, and so I don't worry so much about him. And as long as kids keep reading books and playing tabletop role-playing games, I think I hope things will be okay no matter how cool video games get.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, other things that I would encourage young people to get involved in, especially if they want to go in the game business, is the audio side. Becoming an audio director, Foley sound,
man.
music.
I wish I could Foley sound. That seems like such a fun job. Whenever I see sound Foley guys, they're always doing awesome stuff, like smashing a brisket with a hammer in the parking lot. Like while everyone else is inside working, they're breaking light bulbs in a dark room so they can get the best sound.
Yeah.
That's what I want to spend my day doing, is bizarre sound editing. That sounds great.
It would be pretty fun to, I remember seeing like the guy, I can't remember his name, who did this, the blaster sounds for Star Wars. He went out into the desert, found these high tension lines, would hit them with a wrench and go, and to me, that was just like, wow, that's incredible. And they did some amazing things when they were doing the Foley work for Killer Instinct. I don't know if you guys have played that, but there's crazy diverse characters in that fighting game.
I played it since Game Boy Pocket.
So there's many stories to be told. So many new games to be created. This is just the beginning. I mean, you look back on the film industry, and in 1930, films have been around for 30 or 40 years, I guess. From the very first train thing where people were sitting and they saw a train coming out of a tunnel, and they all jumped up out of their chairs because they were so terrified they didn't realize what was happening. The game industry is in its infancy, both tabletop and video games.
I couldn't talk enough about this tabletop renaissance that we're in. I truly believe it, and I think that we're going to look back on this era and all of these missed games, and that they just slipped through the cracks, right? Because there's so many, like you said, because of things like Kickstarter and GoFundMes and
stuff like itch.io, where you can just self-publish whatever you want.
DM's Guild. It's just a creators. Not only is it a creators I guess it's a consumer's paradise. It's almost a creator's nightmare because there's so much great stuff being created that there's a potential you slip through the cracks right now. There's so much good stuff. I'm so excited. What a great time to be alive for consumers. And it brought me to my next point with you talking about Kickstarter. Are there any games coming out on Kickstarter or anything else, video games or tabletop games or board games, anything that you personally are excited to play?
Wow.
Right.
I really want to play this new Dune game that came out, the tabletop game. I have it, but I haven't even opened it yet because I've just been so insanely busy over the last year. I love the original Dune game. Came out in the 70s, late 70s. I love that universe. So I think Frank Herbert was a genius, like Tolkien. As far as video games, wow, I've just been in a bubble. Like, with like the blinders on. I'm really looking forward to the Halo Infinite campaign. That's going to be super fun. And I want to play Guardians of the Galaxy on Switch because I love playing stuff on Switch. I don't know.
No, those are good answers. Yeah, we're actually playing the Dune TTRPG Wednesdays on our channel.
Oh, is it good?
Yeah, we like it. It's a 2D20 system, which is very unique. And
yeah, that would be the first thing I say is the system. First, the book is really cool.
It's a good book.
Great.
One game of the year. Yeah.
The lore is really digestible in the book. It's not as scattered as Dune tends to be, and so it's really concise. It's really pretty. The art is great. The color's great. The formatting's great. The system, the 2D20 system, is strange. It's cool, and we like it now. But getting into it and kind of figuring out what it does and how it works is sort of alien. It's an interesting system.
It is very unique. But yeah, that's Modifius's, I guess, house system. Very cool. The Dune game's cool. I've learned a lot about the lore for running the game. We're doing a bunch of stuff on Ix. These guys, so you get to make your own house, which is cool. And they made a house, and they're a minor house of House Vernius. So they have an artificial moon that orbits Ix as their home planet, and just really cool stuff that you get to do. Really,
do
cool
you get
stories.
to make Golas?
Oh, you can. They're in there, and there's actually some stuff going on with that in the background, unbeknownst, some secret Gola stuff.
One of the really cool things about that system, maybe it's just that setting, is that it's not a classic adventuring party scenario. Yeah. We are all like house nobles, and so it gives you full range over NPCs, and it promotes like building NPCs in the game to just run the small minute things. You're the war master and you're sending out a squad of soldiers, then you're pretty likely to stay in orbit or stay back at the base and have a squad take care of it.
That's really interesting.
So there's a lot of player agency on having much more control versus like, we're going to walk to this town as a group of adventurers. It's not that kind of game. It's very, very large. The things you do are on a grand scale.
It's very political, cool a lot of intrigue, and a lot of my players have said like, hey, we've always kind of wanted this intrigue heavy experience in Dungeons and Dragons, and they're really enjoying it. So I've enjoyed running it. It's definitely different. It's a completely different way of writing. It's a completely different way of like running a game, but I like it. And also, you're a fan of board games. Dune Imperium, specifically the board game, is also fantastic.
Okay,
it's a good one.
I might have to get that too.
It's a really good one. I think they just announced an expansion called like Planets of Ix or something, and so that's really cool. And yeah, no, it's one of my favorite board games currently. So
I actually the tabletop game I've been excited about. We actually get to play it tomorrow on the stream.
Yes.
It's not out yet, but we finally convinced the creator to come show us a sneak peek. It's an indie game. It's a very small. I think he's self-published. It's just two guys working on it, called Wildsea. And it's like a post-apocalyptic Earth, like maybe hundreds or thousands of years in the future. and ironwood trees have grown all up over the entire planet, and getting down to the floor of the planet gets more and more dangerous as you go. And so you're sailing across the tops of these tree forests on custom saw ships with the last of humanity and the other races that have come down from below to live up top.
Yeah,
So,
I'm excited for that tomorrow.
yeah, I'm really
Sounds
excited
really
for
cool.
that setting. It's like the new setting is really fresh. It's not that kind of same old fantasy feel that we're used to. It gives me like Kipo in the Age of Wonder Beast vibes or something like that. Something a little more high fantasy.
Loved that series, by the way. I watched that with my daughter. That was so good.
Yeah,
And the new
show.
Shira, if you haven't watched that.
I haven't seen the new Shire. It's good. I've liked the new Master of the Universe Revelations.
Well, if you like that, you'll love Shira.
Love Shira. I should check that out.
And it's a great, empowering kind of thing for, especially for young women. I just thought
That's so important. Yeah. Are you by chance an Adventure Time fan?
Yeah, I like Adventure Time.
Just wondering. You sound like
Yeah.
you might be. Just curious.
I like anything with really good, clever writing.
I mean, that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Normally, that's one of our last questions. Is like, what are you looking forward to? It's usually towards the end. Is there anything that you would like to say to just people at home, in general, about yourself or life, or what's the point of it all, Noble? Why?
Well, I listen to a lot of Rush.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll Rush all the
if
time.
you-
Gotcha.
The first
Yeah.
concert I ever went to was a Rush concert.
No way. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I had to have been in like 5th grade, and I went and saw Rush and Deep Purple.
Amazing concert. I got to see them on the Clockwork Angels tour, which was their second to last tour, here in Seattle, and it was amazing. If you haven't listened to Clockwork Angels before, if you're out there and you want some really awesome kind of futuristic epic story, the whole thing is one story, I would listen to Clockwork Angels. But there's a song called Roll the Bones, which is the one of the questions in the lyrics is, why are we here? Because we're here. Roll the bones. Why does it happen? Because it happens. Roll the bones. And it's also a great thing to play if you're playing a role-playing game when you're rolling dice. But here's the thing. Neil Peart, who wrote most of their lyrics, he was a humanist, but he was kind of a skeptic, and had a great sense of like the past and who we are as humans and potentially where we could go. And I think that we have to kind of, even if you don't believe in fate, I think you kind of have to pretend that you are in control of or if you do believe in fate, you have to pretend and live your life like you're in control of your own destiny. Otherwise, it's like shit happens. Bad shit happens. Yes. That's just life. It's chance. Things just happen. And if you always feel like you're crushed beneath the wheel, that you're a victim, you're never going to go anywhere. And we also can't just, in my opinion, just willingly follow somebody else's beliefs or faith or whatever, simply because that's our heritage or we were taught that when we were kids. It's we all are humans. And I think during this time of COVID, since we've been isolated so much from each other, the world could become a really horrible place. And I think that the humanity that we create through friendships, through playing games, through storytelling, might be one of the things that saves us and keeps us from being taken over by a totalitarian society or fascist leaders. Because there's this great poster from the 70s, or a sticker you'd like put on a guitar. It said, "This machine kills fascism." And it's the idea of music, being a poet, and writing music that inspires people and gets them to stand up for something. And I would say the same thing about gaming. This machine kills fascism.
Yeah.
So keep on gaming, keep on writing stories, keep making friends and being good to each other. And find stories that fill your heart and make you feel like you've learned something and maybe you're a better person.
That's really good advice. Well, thank you for making games an inclusive space. Thank you for your work on some of my favorite games. Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. I hope you guys get to play Age 4 together. It's really fun to go in and do a comp stomp against the AI with your friends.
That's exactly what I'm thinking I need to do.
Yeah, it's great. It was really awesome talking to you, Gary, Jahan. I'm looking forward to following you guys and hearing about the different games that you talk about.
I already want to have you back to talk about everything that we weren't able to talk about, because I think we already ran over. I told Noble before we started this that our goal was 15 minutes, but we expected it to be about an hour. And I think now we're at about an hour 15-ish.
We are at an hour 15, yeah.
Yeah, it feels like we could have you on and talk about the things you did as a playwright beforehand and how you got into this business, some of the things that you did and who helped you along this way. And we're out of time. And I'm
happy to come
back. Is that
I would be happy to come back someday and maybe promote another game.
Awesome so
Absolutely
much. Thank you
great.
So much for being here. It was a pleasure.
It was great chatting with both of you, and game on.
Thanks. We've been fresh out the box. You guys take care.